The morning sun cast long shadows across the Nevada desert training facility as Staff Sergeant Maria Santos adjusted her grip on the rifle that had become the source of endless jokes among her male counterparts. The weapon looked different from the standard military-issue rifles that surrounded her on the firing line. Its custom modifications and unique design drew skeptical glances and barely concealed smirks from the elite SEAL sniper team conducting their monthly accuracy trials. "What's that supposed to be, Santos?" called out Chief Petty Officer Jake Morrison, his voice carrying the kind of casual dismissiveness that had become all too familiar. "Looks like something you ordered from a catalog." The other SEALs chuckled, their attention briefly diverted from their own preparations. These were men who had earned their reputation through countless missions in hostile territories, their skills proven in situations where a single shot could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. They carried weapons that cost more than most people's cars, precision instruments crafted by the finest military contractors, and tested in the most demanding conditions imaginable. Maria had heard variations of this conversation dozens of times over the past 6 months. Ever since she had requested permission to use her personally modified rifle instead of standard military equipment, she had faced constant questioning of her judgment. The weapon in her hands was indeed different. A hybrid creation that combined elements from civilian hunting rifles with military-grade components, all carefully assembled and calibrated according to her own specifications. "It's a custom build," she replied calmly, not taking her eyes off the targets that seemed impossibly small in the distance. "Built it myself over the past 3 years." Gunnery Sergeant Rick Coleman, a veteran sniper with over 15 years of experience, shook his head with obvious disapproval. "You don't mess with proven systems, Santos. These weapons have been tested in combat conditions around the world. Your little project there might work fine for weekend hunting trips, but this is serious business." The conversation reflected a deeper tension that had been building throughout Maria's military career. As one of only a handful of women to qualify for advanced sniper training, she had constantly faced the challenge of proving herself worthy of respect from peers who had grown up in an environment where such roles were traditionally male-dominated. Every decision she made, from her choice of equipment to her training methods, was scrutinized with an intensity that her male colleagues rarely experienced. Colonel David Chun, the officer overseeing the training exercise, called for attention as the morning briefing began. "Today's exercise will test long-range accuracy at distances up to 2 miles, he announced, his voice carrying across the desert air. "We've set up targets at various ranges, culminating in the extreme distance challenge. Weather conditions are ideal, with minimal wind and excellent visibility." The SEALs moved into position along the firing line, each man settling into his preferred shooting stance with the smooth efficiency that marked truly professional soldiers. Their rifles represented the pinnacle of military sniper technology, weapons that had been refined through decades of development and battlefield experience. The morning light gleamed off precision scopes that cost more than many people earned in a month. Maria found herself assigned to the position at the far end of the line, a placement that she suspected was intentional rather than coincidental. From this vantage point, she could observe the performance of the other shooters while preparing for her own attempts. The isolation also meant that any failure on her part would be clearly visible to everyone present. As she began her pre-shooting routine, Maria reflected on the path that had brought her to this moment. Growing up on a ranch in Montana, she had learned to shoot at an early age out of practical necessity. Her father, a former Marine, had taught her that accuracy was more important than power, patience more valuable than speed. Those lessons had served her well throughout her military career, even as she faced skepticism from instructors and fellow trainees who questioned whether a woman could master the physical and mental demands of sniper training. The custom rifle in her hands represented countless hours of research, experimentation, and refinement. Every component had been carefully selected and tested, from the barrel that she had personally fitted to the trigger mechanism that she had adjusted to respond to her exact specifications. The scope mounted on top was not the most expensive model available, but it was one that she had learned to use with absolute precision through hundreds of hours of practice. "Shooters, prepare for the first stage," Colonel Chen commanded. "Targets at 800 meters." The first shots rang out across the desert, sharp cracks that echoed off distant mountains. Through her scope, Maria could see the targets clearly, small circles that required precise calculation of wind speed, air pressure, and distance. The other snipers fired with mechanical precision, their shots striking targets with the kind of accuracy that had made them legends within the Special Forces community. When her turn came, Maria settled into her shooting position with deliberate care. The rifle felt familiar in her hands, like an extension of her own body. She had fired this weapon so many times that she could anticipate its behavior under different conditions, understanding exactly how it would respond to environmental factors that might throw off less experienced shooters. Her first shot struck the target dead center, earning grudging nods of approval from the observing SEALs. The second and third shots grouped tightly around the bullseye, demonstrating the kind of consistency that separated amateur shooters from true professionals. But she could sense that her colleagues remained unconvinced, viewing these results as lucky coincidences rather than evidence of genuine skill. "Not bad for warm-up shots," commented Chief Morrison, his tone suggesting that he expected her performance to deteriorate as the distances increased. "Let's see how that toy gun handles some real challenges." The morning progressed through increasingly difficult stages, with targets placed at greater distances and under more challenging conditions. At 1,200 meters, the SEALs continued to demonstrate their exceptional abilities, placing shots with the kind of precision that had earned them their elite status. Maria matched their performance shot for shot, her custom rifle proving its worth despite the continued skepticism of her peers. By the time they reached the 1,500-meter stage, the mood among the SEALs had begun to shift slightly. While they maintained their casual dismissiveness, there was a new undertone of attention in their conversations. Maria's consistent accuracy was becoming harder to dismiss as mere luck, particularly given the increasing difficulty of the shots required. The desert heat was beginning to build as the sun climbed higher in the sky, creating thermal currents that could affect bullet trajectory in subtle but significant ways. These were the kinds of conditions that separated truly exceptional snipers from merely competent ones, requiring an intuitive understanding of environmental factors that could only be developed through extensive experience. As they prepared for the next stage of the exercise, Maria noticed that the casual banter among the SEALs had quieted somewhat. They were beginning to pay closer attention to her technique, observing the way she calculated each shot and adjusted her position to account for changing conditions. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable. Professional curiosity was beginning to override personal skepticism. Colonel Chen announced the next challenge. Targets at 1,800 meters, a distance that pushed the limits of even the most advanced military rifles. At this range, factors like the rotation of the Earth could affect bullet trajectory, requiring calculations that went far beyond basic marksmanship skills. The SEALs approached this stage with increased concentration, their movements becoming more deliberate as they prepared for shots that would test the absolute limits of their abilities. The casual confidence that had marked their earlier performances was replaced by the intense focus that characterized true professionals facing genuine challenges. Maria's preparation for this stage was noticeably different from her earlier routine. She spent additional time studying the targets through her scope, making minute adjustments to her position, and checking environmental conditions with the kind of thoroughness that suggested years of experience with extreme distance shooting. When she finally fired, the result was immediate and unmistakable. The target, barely visible even through high-powered scopes, showed a direct hit that placed her shot within inches of the center mark. The achievement earned surprised murmurs from the observing SEALs, men who understood exactly how difficult such a shot truly was. "Interesting," muttered Gunnery Sergeant Coleman, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by genuine professional interest. "That rifle of yours might have more potential than I thought." The comment represented a significant shift in attitude, coming from a veteran sniper whose opinion carried considerable weight within the Special Forces community. But Maria sensed that the real test was yet to come. The final stage of the exercise would involve targets at distances that pushed beyond the normal capabilities of military sniper rifles, requiring not just exceptional skill, but also equipment capable of performing at the absolute limits of ballistic science. As the morning wore on, anticipation began building toward the ultimate challenge that would either validate Maria's unconventional approach or expose the limitations of her custom-built weapon. The 2-mile target awaited, a distance that would test everything she had learned about precision shooting and everything her rifle was capable of achieving. The atmosphere on the firing line had shifted dramatically as the morning progressed into afternoon. What had begun as casual skepticism among the elite SEAL snipers had evolved into focused professional interest. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos had systematically dismantled their assumptions about her capabilities and her unconventional weapon, forcing them to reconsider their initial judgments. Chief Petty Officer Jake Morrison found himself studying Maria's shooting technique with growing fascination. Her approach differed significantly from the standardized methods taught in military sniper schools, where conventional training emphasized rigid consistency and adherence to proven procedures. Maria's style incorporated subtle variations that seemed to account for factors that others might overlook. "Tell me about that scope setup," he said during a brief break between shooting stages. The question came without the mocking tone that had characterized his earlier comments. The magnification seems different from standard military specs. Maria welcomed the opportunity to discuss the technical aspects of her equipment. "It's a hybrid system," she explained, her voice reflecting the passion of someone who had invested years in perfecting every detail. "The base scope is civilian hunting grade, but I've modified the internal mechanics and added custom calibration features. Most military scopes are designed for durability over precision, but this setup prioritizes accuracy at extreme ranges." The explanation revealed the depth of knowledge that had gone into creating her weapon system. This was not simply a matter of purchasing expensive components and hoping for the best. Every element had been carefully researched, tested, and refined through extensive experimentation. The rifle represented a level of personal investment that went far beyond what most soldiers put into their equipment. Gunnery Sergeant Rick Coleman approached to examine the weapon more closely. As a veteran sniper instructor, he had seen countless modifications attempted by soldiers seeking to improve their performance. Most such efforts resulted in marginal improvements at best, and often created new problems that outweighed any benefits. But Maria's rifle displayed a level of sophistication that suggested genuine engineering expertise. "The barrel work looks professional," he observed, running his hand along the precision-crafted steel. "Who did the machining?" "I did," Maria replied matter-of-factly. "Learned metalworking from my uncle who ran a custom gun shop in Montana. Spent 2 years getting the specifications exactly right." This revelation added another layer to her story. Building a precision rifle required not just theoretical knowledge, but practical skills that took years to develop. The fact that she had personally crafted many of the components suggested a level of dedication that went far beyond casual hobbyist interest. Colonel David Chun had been observing these interactions with growing interest. As the officer responsible for evaluating new technologies and techniques that might benefit military sniper programs, he understood the potential significance of Maria's approach. If her methods could be validated and potentially replicated, they might represent valuable innovations for the Special Forces community. The afternoon shooting stages continued to challenge conventional assumptions. At ranges beyond 2,000 meters, where even the most advanced military rifles began to show limitations, Maria's custom weapon continued to perform with remarkable consistency. Her shots grouped tightly around target centers, demonstrating the kind of precision that military contractors spent millions of dollars trying to achieve. The psychological dynamics among the SEAL team were evolving in real time. Men who had begun the day certain of their technical superiority found themselves confronting evidence that challenged their fundamental assumptions. The experience was both humbling and educational, forcing them to acknowledge that innovation could come from unexpected sources. "How do you calculate for atmospheric pressure at these ranges?" asked Petty Officer Second Class Tom Rodriguez, a young sniper whose reputation for analytical thinking had earned him respect among his peers. The standard formulas start breaking down past 1,800 meters. Maria's response demonstrated the depth of her technical knowledge. "I use modified ballistic calculations that account for temperature gradients and humidity variations at different altitudes," she explained. Standard military formulas assume uniform atmospheric conditions, but real-world conditions are much more complex. The conversation revealed that her shooting success was not based on luck or intuition, but on sophisticated mathematical calculations that went beyond standard military training. She had essentially developed her own ballistic science, combining theoretical knowledge with practical experience to create methods that exceeded conventional capabilities. As the afternoon progressed toward the ultimate challenge, tension began building among all participants. The 2-mile shot represented more than just a test of marksmanship. It was a boundary that separated exceptional shooters from legendary ones. At such distances, factors like the Earth's rotation could affect bullet trajectory, requiring calculations that pushed the limits of ballistic science. The target itself was barely visible even through high-powered scopes, appearing as little more than a distant speck against the desert landscape. Wind conditions at that range were virtually impossible to predict accurately, as air currents could vary significantly between the shooting position and the target. The slightest miscalculation would result in a complete miss, with no way to determine where the bullet had actually struck. The SEALs approached this final challenge with the kind of intense focus that had made them legends within the military community. These were men who had performed under pressure in life-or-death situations around the world, but the 2-mile shot represented a purely technical challenge that would test the absolute limits of their abilities. Chief Morrison was the first to attempt the extreme-range shot. His preparation was meticulous, involving careful calculation of environmental factors and minute adjustments to his rifle settings. The shot, when it came, was executed with textbook precision. Through spotting scopes, observers could see that his bullet had struck near the target area, though the exact placement was impossible to determine at such distance. "Good shooting," Colonel Chin commented, his voice carrying genuine appreciation for the level of skill demonstrated. "That's why you're among the best in the world." One by one, the other SEALs attempted their shots at the extreme target. Each demonstrated the exceptional capabilities that had earned them their elite status, placing bullets in the general target area with impressive consistency. But the distances involved made precise accuracy assessment impossible without electronic confirmation systems. Gunnery Sergeant Coleman's shot produced what appeared to be a direct hit, earning enthusiastic approval from his colleagues. "That's how it's done," he said with satisfaction, his confidence restored by the successful completion of an extremely difficult shot. As Maria prepared for her attempt, she found herself facing not just a technical challenge, but a moment that would define her standing within the Special Forces community. Success would validate her unconventional approach and potentially open doors for future innovations. Failure would confirm the suspicions of those who doubted that non-standard equipment could compete with proven military systems. Her preparation routine was notably different from the SEALs' approach, where they relied primarily on established military procedures. Maria incorporated elements of her own devising. She spent additional time studying atmospheric conditions, making calculations that seemed to go beyond standard ballistic formulas. The desert had grown quiet except for the distant sound of wind across the mountains. All conversation had ceased as everyone present focused their attention on the woman who had systematically challenged their preconceptions throughout the day. The moment carried symbolic weight that went far beyond the simple mechanics of long-range shooting. Maria's breathing slowed to the controlled rhythm that marked truly exceptional marksmen. Her finger found the trigger with the kind of precision that suggested thousands of hours of practice. The rifle felt perfectly balanced in her hands, an instrument that had been crafted specifically for this type of extreme challenge. The shot, when it came, was barely audible, a sharp crack that seemed to disappear immediately into the vast desert landscape. For several seconds, no one moved or spoke, as if the entire group was holding its breath while waiting for confirmation of the result. Then, Colonel Chin's radio crackled to life with a transmission from the spotters positioned near the distant target. The voice on the other end was clearly excited, though the exact words were difficult to make out over the static. Chin's expression changed dramatically as he listened to the report, his eyebrows rising in obvious surprise. "Confirm that reading," he said into the radio, his voice betraying his astonishment. The response was immediate and unambiguous, causing Chun to shake his head in disbelief. The colonel turned to address the assembled group, his voice carrying a note of amazement that was completely uncharacteristic for an officer known for his professional composure. The words he was about to speak would forever change how everyone present viewed both Maria Santos and the potential of unconventional approaches to military technology. Colonel David Chin's voice cut through the desert silence with words that would be remembered for years to come. "Confirmed direct hit. Center mass. 2 miles, 43 yards. The stunned silence that followed was unlike anything the veteran officer had experienced in decades of military service. The elite SEAL snipers, men accustomed to setting the standard for marksmanship excellence, found themselves confronting a reality that challenged everything they thought they knew about long-range shooting capabilities. Chief Petty Officer Jake Morrison was the first to break the silence. "That's impossible," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Nobody makes that shot with a custom rifle. The ballistic calculations alone." But the evidence was undeniable. The spotters of the distant target were confirming not just a hit, but a precision strike that had found the exact center of a target barely visible even through the most advanced military optics. At a distance where even the Earth's rotation became a factor in bullet trajectory, Staff Sergeant Maria Santos had achieved something that bordered on the miraculous. Gunnery Sergeant Rick Coleman approached Maria's position with the kind of reverent attention normally reserved for examining historical artifacts. "I need to understand how this is possible," he said, his earlier skepticism completely replaced by professional fascination. "The physics shouldn't work. At that range, with those atmospheric conditions." Maria's response reflected both pride in her achievement and awareness of its significance. "The rifle is designed specifically for extreme-range work," she explained. "Every component is optimized for ballistic performance beyond normal military specifications. The barrel has a custom twist rate. The chamber dimensions are precision-matched to my ammunition loads, and the trigger mechanism responds to pressure variations measured in ounces." The technical explanation revealed the depth of engineering expertise that had gone into creating her weapon system. This was not simply a matter of assembling expensive components, but of understanding the fundamental physics of long-range shooting and designing solutions that push beyond conventional limitations. "What about the ammunition?" asked Petty Officer Second Class Tom Rodriguez, his analytical mind seeking to understand every factor that had contributed to the unprecedented shot. "Standard military rounds can't maintain accuracy at those distances." "Hand-loaded cartridges," Maria replied. "I measure powder charges to within 1/10 of a grain and select bullets based on individual weight and dimensional consistency. Each round is essentially a custom-manufactured precision instrument." This revelation added another layer to her achievement. Creating ammunition with such exacting specifications required not just knowledge, but also equipment and techniques that went far beyond standard military practices. She had essentially become her own ammunition manufacturer, crafting each cartridge to meet standards that exceeded anything available through normal supply channels. Colonel Chun was rapidly reassessing everything he thought he knew about military sniper capabilities. As an officer responsible for evaluating new technologies, he understood that Maria's achievement represented more than just exceptional marksmanship. It suggested possibilities for advancing military sniper programs in ways that conventional research had not considered. "The implications are significant," he said, thinking aloud. "If these techniques can be replicated and standardized, we could be looking at a fundamental advancement in long-range capabilities." But replication would not be simple. Maria's approach required a combination of technical knowledge, manufacturing skills, and shooting expertise that took years to develop. The custom rifle represented not just a different piece of equipment, but an entirely different philosophy of precision shooting. The psychological impact on the SEAL team was profound. These were men who had built their professional identities around being the absolute best at what they did. Confronting evidence that their assumptions about equipment limitations were wrong forced them to question other aspects of their training and procedures. "We need to document everything," Chief Morrison said, his competitive instincts now channeled toward understanding and potentially adopting Maria's innovations. "If she can teach these techniques to others, it could revolutionize our training programs." The conversation that followed was unlike any that had occurred during previous training exercises. Instead of the usual post-shooting analysis focused on minor improvements to established techniques, the group found itself exploring fundamental questions about the nature of precision shooting and the potential for innovation within military systems. Maria found herself in the unexpected position of being treated as a technical expert by men who had previously dismissed her capabilities. The transformation in their attitudes was complete and immediate. Professional respect had replaced skepticism, and genuine curiosity had overcome prejudicial assumptions. "The scope work is particularly interesting," observed Lieutenant Commander Sarah Walsh, a Naval Special Operations officer who had joined the group as an observer. "How did you solve the parallax issues at extreme ranges?" The technical discussion that ensued revealed the breadth of Maria's expertise. She had not simply modified existing components, but had redesigned fundamental aspects of rifle optics to address problems that most shooters never encountered. Her solutions were elegant in their simplicity, yet sophisticated in their execution. As word of the achievement spread through radio communications, other personnel at the training facility began arriving to witness what had become an impromptu demonstration of shooting capabilities that exceeded anything in official military records. The crowd included instructors, administrators, and visiting officials who had heard reports that seemed too extraordinary to believe. The verification process was thorough and methodical. Multiple spotters confirmed the target hit using different optical systems. Electronic sensors at the target location provided precise measurement data. High-resolution photography documented the bullet hole placement. Every possible doubt was systematically eliminated. "This changes everything," said Master Chief John Sullivan, a veteran instructor whose opinion carried significant weight within the special operations community. "We've been operating under assumptions about maximum effective range that may be completely wrong." The broader implications were beginning to become clear. If Maria's techniques could be adapted for wider use, they might represent a significant advancement in military capabilities. Long-range engagement possibilities could be extended far beyond current doctrine, potentially changing tactical approaches to various types of operations. But the path from individual achievement to systematic implementation would be complex. Maria's methods required a level of technical expertise and attention to detail that went far beyond standard military training. Creating educational programs that could transfer her knowledge to others would be a significant undertaking. "We need to start thinking about how to incorporate this into our training curriculum," Colonel Chun said, his mind already working on the logistical challenges involved. "This represents the kind of innovation that could provide significant tactical advantages." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Brigadier General Robert Martinez, the commanding officer for the entire training facility. Word of the unprecedented shooting achievement had reached his office, prompting a personal visit to assess the situation. His presence added an additional level of significance to the day's events. "I've been briefed on what happened here," the general said, his tone reflecting both skepticism and curiosity. "I want to see this weapon and understand exactly how this shot was possible." Maria found herself providing a detailed technical briefing to one of the highest-ranking officers in the special operations community. The examination of her rifle was thorough, with the general asking pointed questions about design principles, manufacturing techniques, and potential applications for wider military use. The craftsmanship is exceptional, he concluded after several minutes of examination. This represents the kind of innovation that our research and development programs should be pursuing. The general's endorsement transformed the day from a training exercise into a potential turning point for military sniper programs. Maria's achievement had moved from the realm of individual excellence into the category of strategic innovation, with implications that could extend far beyond the Nevada desert training facility. As the afternoon drew to a close, planning was already beginning for follow-up evaluations and potential integration of Maria's techniques into broader training programs. The woman whose custom rifle had been dismissed as inadequate hours earlier was now being consulted as a potential revolutionary in the field of military marksmanship. The transformation was complete, but the real work was just beginning. Converting individual innovation into systematic military advantage would require resources, planning, and institutional commitment that could take years to fully implement. 6 months after the historic shot that had stunned the elite SEAL sniper team, Staff Sergeant Maria Santos found herself standing before a conference room filled with some of the most influential figures in military special operations. The Pentagon briefing room was a far cry from the Nevada desert where a custom rifle had first proven its capabilities, but the stakes were immeasurably higher. The Santos method, as it had come to be known within military circles, was no longer just an individual achievement, but a potential game-changer for American military capabilities. The briefing she was about to deliver would determine whether her innovations would be adopted across the entire special operations community or remain an interesting footnote in military history. General Patricia Williams, the 4-star officer overseeing special operations modernization, opened the session with words that reflected the significance of the moment. What we witnessed in Nevada represents either a remarkable fluke or a fundamental breakthrough in long-range engagement capabilities. Today, we determine which. The audience included representatives from every branch of the military, senior officials from defense contractors, and researchers from military academies. These were individuals who understood that warfare was evolving rapidly and that tactical advantages could emerge from unexpected sources. Maria's achievement had captured their attention because it suggested possibilities that conventional thinking had not considered. The presentation Maria delivered was comprehensive and meticulously documented. Over the past 6 months, she had worked with military engineers and ballistics experts to analyze every aspect of her shooting system. The collaboration had validated her techniques while also identifying ways to improve and standardize them for wider application. The key insight is that conventional military rifles are designed for durability and reliability under harsh field conditions, she explained to the assembled officials. My approach prioritizes absolute accuracy over other factors, creating capabilities that extend far beyond normal engagement ranges. The technical data supporting her presentation was overwhelming. Independent testing had confirmed that her methods could consistently achieve accuracy at distances that exceeded official military records by significant margins. More importantly, the techniques could be taught to other shooters, though the training required was extensive and demanding. Chief Petty Officer Jake Morrison, who had become one of Maria's strongest advocates after his initial skepticism, provided supporting testimony about the practical implications. The psychological impact on enemy forces would be substantial, he said. Knowing that American snipers could engage targets at previously impossible ranges would fundamentally alter battlefield calculations. The strategic value extended beyond simple marksmanship improvements. Extended engagement ranges meant that American forces could operate with greater safety margins, reducing exposure to enemy fire while maintaining offensive capabilities. The tactical flexibility provided by such capabilities could prove decisive in various combat scenarios. But implementing the Santos method across military sniper programs would require significant institutional changes. The level of technical training required went far beyond current instructor capabilities. The equipment specifications demanded manufacturing precision that exceeded standard military contractors. The ammunition requirements involved hand-loading techniques that challenged existing supply chain systems. Cost analysis indicates that fully implementing these techniques would require substantial investment in training facilities, equipment upgrades, and personnel development, reported Colonel James Harrison, the officer responsible for budget planning. However, the capability gains could justify the expenditure if properly managed. The economic considerations were complex but manageable. While initial costs would be substantial, the long-term benefits of enhanced sniper capabilities could provide strategic advantages that far outweighed the financial investment. Military planners understood that technological superiority often determined the outcome of modern conflicts. The discussion that followed Maria's presentation revealed both enthusiasm and concern among the assembled officials. Everyone recognized the potential value of her innovations, but questions remained about practical implementation and potential risks of departing from established military procedures. What happens if we invest heavily in these techniques and they prove ineffective in actual combat conditions? Asked Admiral Robert Chen, voicing the concern that many participants shared. Laboratory conditions are very different from battlefield realities. Maria's response drew on her own combat experience and the testing that had been conducted over the past months. The techniques have been validated under various environmental conditions and stress scenarios, she said. While no training can perfectly replicate combat conditions, the fundamental physics remain consistent. Independent validation had come from multiple sources. Other military snipers trained in Maria's methods had achieved similar results. International competitions had provided opportunities to test the techniques under competitive pressure. Combat veterans had reviewed the procedures and confirmed their practical applicability. The transformation in military thinking was evident in the questions being asked. 6 months earlier, the focus had been on whether Maria's achievement was even real. Now, the discussion centered on how quickly and effectively her methods could be implemented across the entire special operations community. Timeline for full implementation would be approximately 18 months, estimated Major General David Kim, the officer responsible for training standardization. We would need to establish new instructor certification programs, upgrade training facilities, and develop supply chains for specialized equipment. The logistics were daunting, but achievable. Military organizations had successfully implemented major changes before, and the potential benefits of the Santos method justified the effort required. The key would be maintaining quality standards while scaling up production and training capabilities. As the briefing concluded, Maria found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. What had begun as a personal project to improve her own shooting capabilities had evolved into a potential revolution in military sniper doctrine. The custom rifle that had been mocked by her peers was now being studied by some of the most brilliant military minds in the world. The final decision would be made by officials whose responsibilities extended far beyond individual training programs. They were tasked with ensuring that American military forces maintained their technological edge in an increasingly complex global environment. Maria's innovations represented one element in that broader strategic challenge. Approved for full implementation, General Williams announced after a brief consultation with her senior staff. The Santos method will be integrated into all advanced sniper training programs beginning next quarter. The decision marked a historic moment in military history. For the first time, techniques developed by a single soldier working with personal equipment would be adopted as standard procedure across the entire special operations community. The precedent established could encourage other innovations that might emerge from unexpected sources. In the months that followed, Maria found herself traveling between military bases around the world, training instructors who would carry her techniques to thousands of military snipers. The woman whose custom rifle had once been the subject of ridicule had become one of the most sought-after instructors in the military. The impact extended beyond American forces. Allied militaries requested access to the training programs, recognizing that the techniques could enhance their own capabilities. International cooperation in military training reached new levels as countries worked together to implement the Santos method within their special operations units. 2 years after that memorable day in the Nevada desert, military doctrine had been permanently altered. Engagement ranges that had once been considered impossible were now standard expectations. Enemy forces found themselves facing capabilities they had never anticipated, forcing changes in their own tactical approaches. The story of Maria Santos and her custom rifle became legendary within military circles, not just for the technical achievement it represented, but for what it demonstrated about the value of innovation and the importance of remaining open to new ideas regardless of their source. The lesson was clear. Excellence could emerge from anywhere, and those wise enough to recognize and nurture it would gain significant advantages over those who clung to conventional thinking. The rifle that had once been dismissed as inadequate now resided in the Smithsonian Institution, displayed as an example of American military innovation. But its real legacy lived on in the thousands of snipers around the world who have been trained in the techniques it had helped to prove, carrying forward the tradition of precision, dedication, and excellence that Maria Santos had embodied in that single, historic shot across 2 miles of Nevada desert.